Hey guys, Naterz here, and today I am going to be talking about a topic that I find to be pretty interesting. So far, every character that we have gotten has been owned by Warner Brothers. For the most part. Jason is in a weird situation, but Warner does own the rights to the Friday the 13th franchise, according to Wikipedia. So I would consider him to be Warner property. But what about characters that are technically owned by other companies, but also heavily associated with Warner? I'm talking about characters like Barbie and Ken, and even Sonic and others. Well, there is actually a company out there that just so happens to have a lot of characters that have ties to Warner. That company being none other than Lego. Warner and Lego have appeared to have a great relationship over the years. Warner pretty much publishes all of the Lego video games, and Warner has made many TV shows and a couple movies. So, in this video, I will be discussing some possible LEGO characters that we could see make it into MultiVersus. But before I do, I'd like to go over how big getting a LEGO character could be. Not only would getting one LEGO character allow for more future LEGO characters, it would also give us hope for future third-party characters. It would open the door to the previously mentioned Barbie, a character who I have seen fans requesting. I also mentioned Sonic, a character who has had a TV show on Cartoon Network. But I also think that Sonic is a bit more tricky due to him being in Smash and owned by Sega and whatnot. But here's the thing. Warner does own some of the characters that I'm going to mention in this video. They own characters from the Lego Movie, but I do think that they would definitely have to get permission from Lego before putting a Lego character into the game. So if they did get permission from Lego for the Lego Movie characters, could they get permission for other Lego characters as well? And if so, who? Well, there are 3 categories of possible LEGO characters. Those categories being movies, TV shows, and video games. I'll first talk about movies and video games, and then get into the TV show characters, because yes, as you can see, there are quite a few TV show characters. Well, let's first start out with the obvious. If MultiVersus were to add a LEGO character, they would start with Emmett. Emmett is the main character of the LEGO movies, and I'd say he has pretty decent chances of making it into the game. The fun thing about the LEGO movies is that they included a master builder element into them. It reminds me of playing the LEGO games and how you could hold the button and magically build something in seconds. Emmett has the master building power, and I'm sure that he would use it if he were to be added. But the fun part about it is that it really allows for endless possibilities. Emmett could make basically anything that he wants to fight with. The devs could decide to do basically whatever they wanted, but he does have some other moves that could be pulled from the movies. For instance, he could use the piece of resistance to fight, like he does in the movie, as well as make a hammer with some of Lord Business's minions. He also could have a jackhammer move, as LEGO Dimensions gave that to him. Emmett has so much potential, and I am really hoping that he gets added into the roster in the future. Other than the Lego movie, Warner also put out the Lego Batman movie, and the second Lego movie. The Lego Batman movie did not introduce any original characters, so I'd imagine that if MultiVersus adds someone who was in that movie, they will not be in their Lego form. But what about the second Lego movie? Well, the only character that I could see making it in from that movie would have to be Queen Whatever a Wannabe. She wasn't a very popular character by any means, but she does have potential. She can basically morph herself into whatever she wants, which is a neat gimmick. But that being said, I'd rather see that gimmick through a different character, someone like, say, Clayface or something. I wouldn't mind seeing other LEGO movie characters. I'm sure people would like Wildstyle or something. I personally think that Metalbeard could be pretty awesome. And there is one other LEGO movie character that I will be talking about later. But for now, that finishes the movies category. So let's head over to the video games section. The first character is from a video game that I have already mentioned in this video. So if you were paying close attention, you may already know who that is. I personally think that Lord Vortek would be an awesome inclusion in MultiVersus. I think that LEGO Dimensions was such a fantastic game, and I enjoyed playing it a lot when I was younger. I think that it would be really neat to give a nod to that game and include an awesome villain in the MultiVersus roster. And that's just it. Lord Vortek is actually a really neat character, and he has a lot of potential. His whole gimmick is the fact that he can spawn in portals. He could also use his staff to fight. He is a very powerful villain, being able to alter his size and even stretch his limbs. The devs could do so much with him. Rick is a character who we have already seen portals through in his moveset, but I think that Vortek's portals would be a bit different. He would be sending objects through the portals that would then damage the opponent, or spawn in a portal under the opponent, sending them near the blast zone. He would be using them much more maliciously. Vortek overall is a super powerful character, and could definitely hold his ground against anyone on the roster. Plus, due to LEGO Dimensions, he has already interacted with characters like Batman and the Joker, which allows for some unique dialogue. I hope that we get to see Vortek in the future of the game, as I think that he would be a fantastic inclusion. But the next character that I want to talk about was actually also featured in LEGO Dimensions. That character being none other than Chase McCain. And I'm going to be honest here, I actually have never played LEGO City Undercover. It does seem like a really neat game though. I've seen a lot of people say that his moveset could have him changing disguises, allowing for different types of moves. For instance, if we look at the LEGO City Undercover wiki, we can see that he has a total of 7 disguises. The regular police officer, the robber, miner, astronaut, and farmer, and as well as the fireman and construction worker. It also says what abilities each has. So if he used his police officer disguise in MultiVersus, he would be able to use a grapple gun. If he used his astronaut disguise, he could use a jetpack. And if he used the farming disguise, he could use a pig cannon, and so on. And yes, you heard that right, a pig cannon. Plus, I'd imagine that he would have standard attacks. I'd imagine that when he attacks, he could change disguises. So, if he used his up special, he would put on his astronaut disguise and blast upward with his jetpack and so on. He would probably have his police uniform as his base outfit. I think that Chase could be awesome in this game, and I really would love to see him included. There have been 5 LEGO shows that have appeared on Cartoon Network. Some shows may be more likely to appear in MultiVersus than others, but I will be discussing all of them in this video. The first and the most popular of them would definitely have to be Ninjago. Ninjago has been around for quite some time, and it has a pretty large fan base. The original show aired on Cartoon Network, and Warner Brothers distributed the LEGO Ninjago movie. Ninjago also showed up in LEGO Dimensions, and Warner published the Ninjago video game based off of the movie. It probably is important to note that Warner owns TT Games, the developers behind the majority of existing LEGO games. This does mean that LEGO and Warner appear to have a pretty good relationship. I don't think that it is that out of the realm of possibility to see characters get in. So Ninjago being probably the most popular and recognizable series tied to Warner, aside from maybe the LEGO movie, I'd imagine that Player First Games would attempt to get their hands on a Ninjago character. Personally, I'd like to see one of 3 characters, those being Kai, Lloyd, and Zane. Firstly, I think that Kai is sort of a no-brainer. He has been considered the main character of the show and is very popular. Someone with fire powers is not something that we have seen yet in MultiVersus, and Kai could introduce that. I think that Lloyd can also be considered the main character of the Ninjago movie. I remember watching it shortly after it came out, and I did enjoy it. Lloyd has electric powers, something that we have seen through Black Adam, but I still think it is pretty neat. Not to mention, all of the LEGO Ninjago characters have some sort of weapon, most of them actually having weapons plural. The mix of being ninjas with hand-to-hand combat knowledge, as well as some sort of powers and weapon experience, makes for a really awesome character with a ton of potential. I think that Zane would be neat, as I kind of have always loved ice powers, and a robot gives a little more potential than a human, in my opinion. Either way, I totally think that Ninjago should be added if the devs can get permission to add them. Remember how earlier I mentioned that there was another LEGO movie character that I would mention? Yeah, well, that happens to be Unikitty. They have made a whole TV show based off of her character. She could actually be a pretty neat character to get into the game, though. She has a whole anger gimmick. I'd imagine that if her opponent is at a high percent, she will get angry and deal more damage. While in her angry form, she has fire powers. She can spit flames as well as some other things like this punch attack here. She also can fly while not in her anger mode, so she definitely does have a ton of potential. I think that it would be interesting to see what route the devs go for her character model. In the show, she looks a lot less LEGO, but in the movie she is obviously made out of LEGO bricks. The devs really could go either direction with her, and I think that she could bring a lot of life to the game, and I really would like to see her in the future. Okay. I'm gonna be honest here, I have never watched an episode of the Mixels series, so I have no idea which character would get into the game, and there appears to be quite a lot of them. I do think though that the concept of a character mixing with another to gain more powers is really neat. I think that is kind of like how their gimmick would work. Kind of similar to a Ben 10 type character. They could have maybe 3 transformations or something like that, along with their base character. When the base character presses its down special, it can choose between 3 mixes. The mixes give the base character extra powers, and change up the moves a little bit. Maybe the moves aren't completely changed, but there are definitely some that are. From the little I've seen of the show, it definitely seems to be like a pretty neat one. I enjoy the art style a lot, and it seems pretty cool overall. I think that Mixels is a great pick, and not a pick that most people would be expecting. But it would add a ton of life to the game, and the roster overall. And I know that there would be a lot of fans who would be thrilled to see the inclusion of Mixels. Legends of Chima is not a series that I really see get thrown out there for possibilities of MultiVersus characters. The show was on Cartoon Network, and some of the main characters appear in LEGO Dimensions, although I do remember them being pretty cheap sets as I often found them at my local Five Below. I think that Lavelle could be a pretty cool pick here, but I think that Krager could be pretty neat as well. Both characters have their standard weapons, but they also could use Chi somehow in their moveset, making them a lot stronger. Warner Bros. Has also published a game called LEGO Legends of Chima: Lavelle's Journey. So Warner has had ties to Chima many times. And although the show isn't very popular in this current day and age, that is not the case when it first aired. And it also has pretty positive reviews overall. When I say that Mixels would be an underrated pick, I think that Chima would be even more underrated. And it would give us a pretty neat character as well. The last series that I want to talk about in this video is LEGO Nexo Knights. I actually remember getting a LEGO Nexo Knights set back in the day, even though I had never watched the show. Personally, I think that I would pick Aaron as the character to add from the series. He would definitely be a mage, as his main weapon is a crossbow type weapon, and he has a hover shield. This would make him be able to fly across the stage using this as an offensive weapon, and his bow as more of a defensive weapon. Plus, he has even had some shoulder cannons and other types of weapons as well. I kind of doubt that we will ever see a Nexo Knight character get in, but it is a fairly interesting series, and I would definitely not be disappointed if we saw them in the future of the game. With that, I think that we will end the video here. LEGO has had so many characters that the devs could choose from, and even if they narrowed it down just to the characters tied with Warner, as I did in this video, there really are a lot of neat characters that could bring so much to the game. Plus, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it would maybe even pave the way for us to see more third-party characters get in. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. It would encourage me to make future content, and I would very much appreciate it. Next week, I plan on making a video on characters from Warner Animation that we could see make it into MultiVersus. So, if that sounds interesting, stay tuned. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next week.